Good afternoon, everyone. This is our final webinar in our informally called Catholic Publishers Summer School, which we are hosting in lieu of our in-person membership meeting. So today's topic is surviving in a world that says information just wants to be free with Teresa Brinati from the Society of American Archivists. She's going to give you a much deeper introduction, but just a few words before we begin. You will receive a copy of the video of this webinar in your email shortly after this concludes. It might be a couple hours. The video also will be available at the Association of Catholic Publishers website. Under programs, click on webinars. All of our webinars that we've done are historically stored there. You can also find all of the webinar videos at our YouTube channel. Just search for Association of Catholic Publishers. Next week, the next installment of the Catholic Publishing Summer School are our peer groups. If you have not registered already, please do so. They begin on Tuesday with marketing, and you will receive an email later on today as a reminder. We're also looking for agenda items, so please forward those to me if you have any. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Teresa at this point and enjoy today's presentation.
Welcome to the webinar, Surviving in a World That Says Information Just Wants to Be Free. I'm Teresa Brinati. Director of Publishing for the Society of American Archivists. Aside from 3 years working in communications for a large corporation and a brief stint as a stringer for a local newspaper group, I spent 3 decades in association publishing, and all of it at SAA. When Teresa Brown, Executive Director of the Association of Catholic Publishers, contacted me in early March to see if I might be interested in being a speaker at ACP's annual membership meeting on changes in the print industry and what impact they might have in the future, I was intrigued. From both a professional and personal standpoint, I felt a natural affinity to ACP and what it presents. In browsing ACP's website, I saw that many of its publisher members have informed my own reading in Catholic literature. And in looking over the dozens of such titles on my home bookshelves, it's clear that Catholic publishers face stiff competition, perhaps from each other, as well as from university presses and trade publishers, not to mention the omnipotence of Amazon. The competition and pressure to provide more for less, and in particular, to make information free, is a critical challenge for publishers in all categories of the industry. That's the professional side we have in common, but there's also a personal one. I have deep Catholic roots thanks to my parents. My elementary, high school, and university education was respectedly entrusted to the Sinsinawa Dominicans, the Sisters of Providence of St. Mary of the Woods, and diocesan priests. I'm grateful for the quality of instruction I received, the faith my parents in these communities nurtured, and the engagement in professional and community service they fostered in my life. And hey, maybe I'll even earn a plenary indulgence just by doing this webinar. Since Teresa Brown's invitation in early March, the COVID-19 pandemic has profoundly changed our world. A heartbreaking 100,000 lives and counting have been lost. A vaccine is far off, and more than 40 million people are out of work. The topic initially agreed upon for this presentation, how information just wants to be free, has since been amplified by the global public health emergency. In less time than a season, we have changed the way we live and work, how we communicate, and how we conduct business. We have grappled with sheltering at home, working remotely, mastering a variety of technology for daily virtual gatherings and to stay continuously connected with colleagues, not to mention providing more of our products and services digitally than ever before. This webinar, in fact, was originally supposed to be a session at ACP's in-person conference in Chicago last week, before such events were canceled as a result of the pandemic. With lightning speed, our organizations have accelerated online programming, like this event. We wondered what effect this acceleration ultimately would have on promoting our books and even gathering to discuss books. And we may have even hoped that this would be the breakout moment our ebooks have been waiting for. But how to make sense of it all and even plan, let alone budget for the future? These are, of course, existential publishing anxieties important to our livelihood. But the protests erupting in cities throughout this country in the past week, including here in my beloved hometown of Chicago, over the brutal police killing of a subdued Black man in Minneapolis, has brought to glaring light again the persistence of racial atrocities. Our communities, our colleagues, our customers have been deeply impacted not only by COVID-19, but also structural racism and economic inequality. These latest events only highlight our need to listen and care for one another, to show fidelity to our shared core organizational value of social responsibility, and to be forces for systemic change. One of the things the pandemic has demonstrated is an almost insatiable hunger for information, and not misinformation, facts and evidence-based information, an urgent need for inspiration and action. Coincidentally, the type of information collected in archives, as well as dispensed by Catholic publishers and reflected in the books we respectively produce. We need to call on the saints, and more than the patron saints of our publishing endeavors, to help us during these unprecedented times. For years, I've drawn blank looks whenever I respond to the question, where do you work? So it's worth reinforcing the role of archives in society. At a basic level, archives exist so that people can get factual information they need to be informed, to make decisions in their businesses, to learn about their personal histories. Archives, after all, ensure the accountability of government by preserving public records and making them available to us citizens as is legally and ethically appropriate. They ensure the accountability of non-governmental institutions to their shareholders, boards, and other constituents. They preserve unique or collectible documents, and they serve as memory institutions for a culture. Records are essential extensions of human memory that can be used to help bind society together and serve as tools of social justice and reconciliation. So I'll ask you, do you have an archives? How are you collecting your company's history? And if you don't have one and you need assistance, I've got the books for you. First, some context about the Society of American Archivists and our journal, and the Society of American Archivists, and our journey in freeing up content that we published. We are North America's oldest and largest national professional association for archives and archivists. We're a not-for-profit entity, a 501c3 organization. We represent approximately 6,000 professional archivists employed by governments, universities, businesses, libraries, museums, historical societies, and religious congregations and denominations, which is to say that our members' needs and means are diverse. By the way, because this is a case study of sorts, whenever I use the word member, replace it in your mind with customer, and it will make the similarities between our publishing operations more obvious. SAA's budget of $2.5 million is largely derived from membership dues and an annual conference, with additional revenue streams from year-round educational offerings and our publishing enterprise. That enterprise consists of book sales, royalties from licensing of content, digital and print advertising, and journal subscriptions, all of which contribute nearly 20% to our organization's bottom line. SAA has a staff of 12. 2 of us comprise the publications department. And publishing, as you are well aware, is labor intensive. There are 2 paid member appointments, a book editor and a journal editor. Otherwise, we rely heavily on volunteers to accomplish our goals. There are 2 volunteer boards, a book publishing board and a journal editorial board, and a dictionary working group. All of this largely volunteer infrastructure allows us to punch above our weight when it comes to publishing. We have a simple guiding principle: foster a culture of publishing. Our brand is excellence. We keep the intellectual quality high. Our goal is to provide the type of experience that makes archives professionals think of SAA first when they want to read and when they want to write. Our members are not only our customers, but as I just shared, also our workforce. All of our content is member-driven. In any given year, approximately 2,000 folks author content for our various outlets, from blog posts to book reviews, from magazine pieces to research articles, and of course, full-length books. We nurture authors every step of the way. And when they're not writing, we want to provide multiple ways to get involved with content, such as service on our book publishing and editorial boards, being a peer reviewer, and encouraging our customers to use their social networks to discuss content. It's a conscious and intentional interweaving of opportunities across our content ecosystem. Producing high quality content costs money no matter if it's a print or digital edition, whether freely accessible or a hybrid approach. There are labor, production, storage, dissemination, and marketing expenses. We may be a nonprofit, but generating revenue is an imperative for sustaining our publishing operation. As mentioned earlier, book sales, subscriptions, licensing, and advertising contribute nearly 20% to our bottom line. It's our mission to build content and community. Book publishing reflects our core organizational values and provides platforms for discussion. These platforms include our One Book, One Profession reading initiative and our podcast Archives in Context, which goes behind the scenes with our book, journal, and magazine authors. Both platforms are designed to build community around our content. Perhaps you have similar programs. Our chief strength is our peer review, evaluation, and editing process. It takes advantage of a volunteer structure in a way that nurtures the next generation of writers to ensure that we'll be in the book business for a long time. That's our value proposition. It's how we differentiate ourselves from our main competition, which is allied professional associations, university presses, and commercial ventures. Our freeing information has come in evolutionary steps for our organization, as it probably has for Catholic publishers too. The 2002 Budapest Open Access Initiative, an international effort to make research articles in all academic fields freely available on the internet, put forward a bold vision to lay the foundation for uniting humanity in a common intellectual conversation and quest for knowledge. The heady idea resonated with our customers, who have long supported the democratization of information. With the aid of a generous grant from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, we leapt into open access in 2007, when we digitized back issues and launched an online version of our journal, American Archivist. Now in its 83rd year of continuous publication, the entire run of the journal, except the 6 most recent issues, is freely available. While it was not without fiscal and intellectual tension, freeing up this content was transformational for our organization. At the time, 3 assumptions shaped online access options. First, as with print, members and subscribers get exclusive first access to the research articles in the 6 most recent issues, which amounts to a 3-year embargo to the public. Other content in those issues, specifically the editor's introduction and book reviews, are made freely available upon publication. Second, SAA retains the income stream from subscriptions to offset production expenses. Third, SAA sustains content in print and digital form for the foreseeable future. It's a delicate balance, providing free access and protecting the revenue model that underlines membership and institutional subscriptions. Article product charges, aka author fees, are not a funding option for us. The fact is, without a significant increase in member dues committed to journal publishing, the completely open model, gold open access, is economically unsustainable for SAA. Our journal more closely aligns with a version of the green open access model that permits authors to retain copyright, assign Creative Commons licensing, and deposit their content in their institutional repository and even on their own websites. The journal content has been licensed to JSTOR, a collection of digital books and journals from academic and open access publishers, and it yields an annual royalty for us based on article usage, which contributes to our revenue stream. Embracing a version of open access for the journal signified a fundamental shift in our value proposition that had a cascading effect on other publishing products. There continues to be plenty of discussion about the implications of loosening up traditionally exclusive content and whether or not releasing it to the public erodes membership and subscription levels, which in turn affects revenue core to publication sustenance. But that has not been the case for us, and our totals have largely held steady. As a result, SAA has made digital versions of other print products open access and freely accessible to anyone without delay, such as a dictionary of professional terminology, our magazine, and e-newsletters. In freeing up this information, our organization built networks beyond its core audience and fortified its reputation as an authoritative resource in the global archives, library, and knowledge management communities. For example, our bi-weekly e-newsletter has 14,000 subscribers, more than double our membership. It provides us access to a market beyond our primary audience, which has increased digital advertising sales. The new edition of the Dictionary of Archives Terminology, launched at the end of April, is the most trafficked area on our website. Some of the terms are second only to Wikipedia, beating out dictionary.com and Merriam-Webster, other famously free resources. Our free information plays out on iPhones and screens and drives conversation on social platforms. More significantly, it has evolved our value proposition. This free content has bolstered our brand by building community beyond our traditional primary audience and customer base. More on that in a moment. While open access and free content are now part and parcel of periodical publishing, it presents unique challenges for book publishing, which for us operates on a different funding and consumption model. Book publishing in associations is not subsidized by member dues like our magazines and journals are. At our small organization, more than 200 titles have been published since the 1970s, and books have been the primary instrument used by customers to build their profession into a leading publishing force. SAA publishes 3 to 6 new titles a year, with 60+ unique titles currently for sale in our online bookstore. Book sales have been a significant revenue stream that counts university students and individual practitioners among our steadiest customers. Ebooks, however, account for less than 10% of our sales. Our customers do not like the restricted digital rights formats that SAA uses and would prefer instead a flexible PDF, something that could easily be passed around. There's tremendous sensitivity to pricing in our marketplace, which may be tied to archival salaries and wages, but has almost certainly been influenced by Amazon. Compared to our competitors, our books are routinely less expensive. Members enjoy a discount of 30% off the list price, again, part of our value proposition. Even so, a whopping 62% of our book sales are to customers who are not members. With our 2-tiered pricing, the return to SAA is greater from these types of customers. That said, revenues have been trending downward for a decade and reflect wider consumption trends. Currently, books make a 10% revenue contribution to our budget, a far cry from 25% in 2010. Still, the Society of American Archivists has added open access elements in its book publishing program, as you can see from this slide. We've been influenced by Amazon, as every publisher has. Our Peek Inside includes freely downloadable content in the online bookstore. We have experimented with a business model in which books addressing professional standards are free online, with customers paying for print. And we've surprisingly have sold a couple thousand copies of these types of books. We offer authors more latitude with their content. They can publicly display the last non-formatted copy, that is the version immediately preceding page proofs, on their personal websites. And when a book goes out of print, we make it fully available via our website under free publications and also in open access repositories. Our out-of-print books are now experiencing an afterlife. We have liberated our book content as much as we can, and yet our customers crave more. In addition to low-cost books, they want free shipping. They are so spoiled by Amazon. The complaint we field most often from customers is, in fact, the cost of our shipping. But warehouse, picking, packing, and shipping costs are real, and we don't do the volume of sales to absorb it in our publishing operation. We have no choice but to pass these costs on to the customer. And I'm interested in learning how you're containing your distribution costs. According to the Association of American Publishers, year-to-date revenues for professional books, the category in which SAA falls, and the fourth item listed in the chart on the left, had a modest increase of 3.8% in the first quarter of 2020 versus the first 3 months of 2019. Religious presses, the third category listed on the chart, unfortunately, did not fare as well and were down 5.7%. But March tells a different story. The chart on the right indicates that the statistics for the early days of the pandemic show professional books down 21.1% versus 2019. Religious presses were down 15.6%. The steepest declines were in educational publishing, likely due to the mass closures of schools. As an aside, for us, textbook sales have not been robust for several years. A survey of instructors indicated that there's lots of cherry picking going on. As a result, rather than adopting our books for courses, instructors instead request permission to put a chapter on reserve and recommend the book to students, which does not always lead to a sale. I'm guessing that you're having similar experiences. The American Association of Publishers further reports that print books in the consumer publications category increased 1.2%, while ebooks revenues declined 4.8%, which seems incongruous with people sheltering at home. Perhaps not surprisingly, downloaded audio continues to grow during the month of March. We've not ventured into this type of publication. It's still unclear how severely the industry will be affected by the ongoing crisis. Our total book revenue as of March 31st was higher than last year by 56% and exceeded budget by 14%. And sales were up again in April. Total revenue was higher than last year by 59% and exceeded budget by 70%. This was aided and abetted by a bumper crop of new titles, along with 2 books targeted to the general public. For us, these are victories to be sure and give us reasons to hope. Situations like the pandemic bring out the best in communities. As one of our book authors noted in his just submitted manuscript for a book on professional virtues, the archival community's response to this crisis has been characterized by a sense of responsibility for one another, respect for archival labor, an ethics of care, and a compassionate justice. Like you, we are listening and learning, sensitive to the layoffs and furloughs that have deeply impacted communities. And like so many publishers, we've offered book discounts up to 50% off. We've temporarily removed the embargo on the 6 most recent issues of the journal, making them available freely to all through August 15th. We implemented a Go Green initiative that temporarily eliminated print publication and focused on the digital editions of our magazine and journal to reduce both costs and climate impact. And we pivoted quickly to convert in-person education courses to online and offer 3 free webcasts. The SAA Foundation, our charitable arm, established the Archival Workers Emergency Fund, which has raised more than $81,000 and has supported 112 archival workers in need. And we're in the process of transforming our week-long annual conference in August, with 2,000 attendees anticipated, to a virtual event. We're now in a frenzy to recast our many book events in a virtual environment, such as book launches and book chats, a salute to authors, and our business meetings of our voluntary boards. We would also set up at our physical conference a bookstore on site, and we bring product with us. Making up the revenue that's generated from on-site sales is going to be a challenge for us, and I welcome your ideas for innovating in any of these areas. Has this public health crisis ushered in the ultimate info should be free moment, or have there been signs along the way before it? Earlier, I mentioned that our journal and some of our books were in the HathiTrust digital library. How did it get our content since we didn't directly provide it to them? It was digitized via Google Books and the Internet Archive digitization initiatives. Recall that in the early 2000s, Google had what seemed like a really crazy but intriguing idea. Take the bulk of the world's books, scan them, and create a monumental digital library for all to access. Google got part of the way in their ambitious scheme, digitizing approximately 25 million books from major university libraries like Michigan, Stanford, and Harvard, as well as the New York Public Library, all places that probably purchase books from you and me. A legal battle of epic proportions ensued between authors and publishers and Google over alleged copyright violations. The case was ultimately dismissed in federal court in 2013 and allowed Google to keep on scanning. As part of the deal, partner libraries of Google got to keep digital copies of their scanned works for research and preservation use. That material helped stock a partnership called the HathiTrust Digital Library. Established in 2008 and based at the University of Michigan, it has grown to include 128 member institutions and now contains 8 million unique items, about 95% of them from Google scanning, according to the website. The rest come from Internet Archive's ongoing scanning work, as well as local digitization efforts. During this pandemic, Internet Archive, a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge, raised the ante for freeing up information when it established the National Emergency Library, a temporary collection of 1.3 million books, many still in copyright. It lifted all restrictions on its book lending until the end of the public health crisis to serve the nation's displaced learners while schools and libraries are closed. While traditional libraries pay publishers licensing fees and agree to make ebooks available for a particular period or a certain number of times, aka controlled digital lending, Internet Archive has upset the proverbial apple cart by operating differently. On the one hand, it's a noble effort that democratizes information by making it equitably accessible. But 4 major publishers think differently, and this week announced they are suing Internet Archive over willful mass copyright infringement through freely accessible ebooks, according to an article in the New York Times. They make the argument that Internet Archive is robbing publishers and authors of revenue at a moment when it's desperately needed. Communities helping each other is admirable, but as the pandemic wanes, we will have to return to a business model that allows us not just to survive, but thrive. At SAA, we'll have to walk back temporary free access to our journal content. But that may not be without peril. Our customers will have gotten used to the access and may feel entitled to it. And we can't continue to offer better than Bezos discounts on books. I'm guessing it's the same for you too. Such a tightrope to walk. It's a delicate balance to make information in all formats free to consumers while allowing the creating bodies to exist so that they continue to create new publications for consumption. What it really means is that information will continue to become free essentially as soon as it can be made free in the context of the survival of the respective organization. Publishing is an ecosystem that has components that need to be in balance. There's a cost to creation and accessibility. So what is the new normalcy? Information may just want to be free or ultra low cost, but with books, there are complex and intersecting social and financial economies of value that have to be negotiated. If publishers don't bear the substantial costs associated with these economies and the labor involved in quality control, our value proposition, after all, who or what then? Certainly not authors, and not the organizations or institutions with which they're affiliated. Quality content in its many formats and applications is the essence of the value that publishers provide to society. The absolute indispensable features of publishing, filtering, amplifying, and framing of content. The dissemination, access, preservation, and curation have unavoidable cost. As someone much wiser than me noted, publishing and scholarship are a form of labor under capital. In order to survive and thrive in this digitally networked world, we need partners, both public and private. SAA has formed collaborative publishing relationships with allied professional publishers, such as the American Library Association and the Association of Canadian Archivists, to jointly publish books. In both cases, we either share overlapping markets or directly compete, yet we found room for common ground to achieve publishing goals and share the costs and rewards. It wasn't easy. There was lots of back and forth and hashing out co-publishing agreements. I'm pleased to say that one of the books resulting from these efforts was published last summer, and another is due out next month. Last year, we made our first foray into sponsored content, and it was done in a way that did not undermine the integrity of the book. The book, Creating Family Archives, is aimed at the general public, and it received financial support from a company that sells archival supplies and is also interested in family history. They have a tasteful double-page spread on the very last pages of the book, and their support is acknowledged in the listing in our online store. We need to continue to explore new business models, subscription architecture, and authentication systems that would allow us to disseminate book content in new ways. When we surveyed our members a few years ago, there was considerable interest in a tiered subscription service where, for an annual fee, customers could have online access to either the entire library or a subset of SAA books. Searchability, cross-platform compatibility, and bookmarking were identified as features that would most affect our customers' decisions to use such a service. The cost of the service and, to a lesser extent, the ability to print were also important elements that would affect their decision-making. So we investigated open source publishing platforms, Fulcrum and Manifold. They are not quite the right fit for us at this point, but we have not let go of the idea and will continue to explore it. In terms of leveraging virtual gatherings, next Thursday evening, we are doing a virtual book launch via Zoom for a book we jointly produced with an allied professional publisher. The launch is actually the opening plenary at our partners' annual conference. Afterward, there will be a virtual toast and happy hour. I'll let you know how it goes. One thing is certain, we cannot proceed with business as usual. Earlier this week, we paused all of our product and other promotions to stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. Like many organizations, we issued a statement condemning the harassment and violence against the Black community. Now is the time for difficult conversations and action. As publishers, it means continuing to perform our core functions of quality control while also reducing barriers to authorship and demonstrating social relevance. We can begin by examining at a structural level our peer review, author selection, and topic prioritization processes, and dismantle any bias that is part of those processes. We can take steps to have editorial boards and staff reflect the audiences we represent and serve or would like to serve. Catholic publishers and the archives community are in unique positions to adapt and respond to these challenges, given our core beliefs and long-standing commitments to trusted evidence-based content that informs, educates, inspires, and promotes the health and literacy of our audiences and serves the public good. Quickly, I wanted to share a few of my favorite things with you. The Archival Resources for Catholic Collections offers Catholic religious leaders, managers of Catholic collections, and scholars of Catholic history curated information and guidance on aspects of managing and using archival collections. You can check it out at www.archivalrcc.org. The Scholarly Kitchen blog is published by the Society for Scholarly Publishing. Don't be dissuaded by the name. The blog features engaging posts on current issues that are applicable in every category of publishing. And Beyond the Book is a weekly podcast by the Copyright Clearance Center that offers breaking news and analysis from across the global content industry. It's worth checking out. Finally, I've purchased so many of your books over the years. Here's two of ours that may be of interest to you. They're the first books by SAA targeted to the general public and are also examples of collaborative publishing and sponsored content, respectively, that have afforded us the opportunity to produce them. The postmodern and post-truth world we live in may have reached its zenith. A Matter of Facts, The Value of Evidence in an Information Age by Laura Millar grapples with the definitions of data, facts, evidence, and truth, and how these parts of information are used and abused in modern society. This should be a matter of concern for everyone, given the twin threats of fragile digital records, evidence, and the current post-truth world of alternative facts that we live in. Another volume that should be on every bookshelf is Creating Family Archives, a step-by-step guide to saving your memories for future generations by Margot Note. Family history is important, jigsaw puzzle pieces in the larger sweep of our collective history. Family photos, videos, old documents, and cherished papers deserve a better home than a cardboard box. And digital images and email exchanges need a better home than your phone. This book tells you how to preserve and organize those memories. And incidentally, the book's concepts are also applicable in organizational settings. So if your company or organization doesn't have an archives, this is a good introduction. Both are available on Amazon. Thank you. And now some questions for us to consider together.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Kind of referencing back to the 3 points that Teresa covered in her sharing about what the Society of American Archivists is doing are these 3 questions. How can book publishers thrive in a world where information just wants to be free or ultra low cost? Publishing has value, but organizations need income. So how has your value proposition evolved? And then how has the pandemic create opportunities for transformation in your business? So if any of you would like to share, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn everyone's microphones on. So I'm unmuting everyone right now. If your microphone is still muted, that means you have to unmute yours. So if someone would like to share something, please give that a shot. Everyone's still on mute. Or if you'd like to share a response, you could use the question feature or the chat feature as well. Both of those are here, and I am more than happy to monitor those. I see a couple people have turned their microphones on. That's great. Maria, you're one of the first ones. Anybody want to share any thoughts or any responses to these questions or any other comments for Teresa?
It's a shy group.
It's a small group. We're an intimately small group.
Lean and serene, as I like to say.
Right. Well, if no one has any questions or comments, then I think we will close out our presentation for today. Any last chance? Going once?
Okay, I was able to turn myself on. It's Jennifer Bober from Renew. I will say that one of the things that we've done is really upped, what we're doing digitally, offering webinars, and because of what we do, we've actually been offering online faith sharing. So it's, working with our resources and the good thing about it is it kind of teaches people how to do it so that they can go back to their parishes and lead it themselves.
That's fantastic. I think that's a great example of leveraging a digital environment to achieve your mission, and then to have your customers spread the word moving forward.
Another comment too I'd like to add is I was speaking with another ministry leader this morning, and one of the things that sounds like you're doing that she was commenting on, Jennifer, is really building confidence among Catholic leader people in the pew kind of types to use the technology to do just that, to either build or continue to maintain some experience of community, and that building that confidence is a really important goal. Anybody else, if you want to say something, you can also raise your hand. I can see that as well.
I'd also like to encourage people who may be shy about participating now to contact me via email. My email address is listed on the first slide, and you can also get it from Teresa Brown, because I'd really like to hear about what you're doing so that I can learn from the many ways that you're innovating at this point, particularly in virtual environments, because as I explained, our own annual conference is in August, and all of the book type events that we normally did face-to-face, from bringing content on site to sell in our bookstore to launching books and book chats, will now have to be done remotely. And it's a brave new world for us in that respect.
Another just comment before we leave this is there is a peer group meeting next week. Marketing is the first on Tuesday. I could definitely see maybe revisiting these questions. I recognize some of you as being part of that peer group. So what I'll do is I'm going to capture these and I will put those on the agenda to see if there's anything that the larger group would like to share about that and give you a chance to think about it more. So that's actually my final pitch, and that is that there are peer groups. Please don't forget them next week. We are also trying to we're trying to get something on a webinar nature to respond to the racism issue right now, and try to share resources and thoughts and ideas with parish leaders. So kind of keep an eye out for that, especially if you feel like you have customers on the other end who might find that useful. I think we're trying to target something next week. We'll see. It's as with everything, we're trying to turn quickly on a dime, and that's always a challenge with organizations and when we try to collaborate, but we'll see what we can do. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you once again for joining this webinar. I hope that it was beneficial. The video link will be mailed to you shortly after this is concluded. And again, the video will live at the webinar page at the ACP website, as well as at the Association of Catholic Publishers YouTube channel. So thank you to Teresa. Thank you so much for doing this with us. And thank you to those who participated. And that is the end of our presentation. So I'll say goodbye. Teresa, any last words before we go?
Thank you, Teresa Brown, for inviting me, and thank you to listeners.
Wonderful. Thank you, and have a great weekend, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.